Hello, and welcome to Postcards from a Soul and Her Human. I'm the human Gina. Thank you for being here with me. I appreciate it very much. I'm here because something amazing happened, which seems to be the case in my life as of late. So many amazing things happen within my body, with my connection to my higher self or my soul team and the communication. There's just so much always going on. And when I am drawn to the microphone because of something specific, I get excited, and I can't wait to share it. But at the same time, it all just seems so wild, and I'm still kind of reeling from the miraculous nature of this life, truly. And I every day I say out loud, I'm just so excited to be here and for what's possible, and and I keep receiving, excuse me, these amazing communications from my soul team. And I had an amazing realization, or I'm going to even call it an epiphany, a couple of weeks ago that really helped to gel together everything I've been exposed to the last few years during this time of my energetic or spiritual awakening. It's been almost 3 years, and this is a benchmark time for me because this whole thing happened or started to happen for me. And by the whole thing, I mean my spiritual awakening. And this was not an easy thing that happened to me. And I know if you've listened to me over the last year and a half of this podcast, you know my story, but I'll briefly just touch base on so anybody new can understand what I'm talking about. It was nearly 3 years ago, and it's now the middle of April in 2024, and it was nearly 3 years ago at the end of June that my ex-husband finally left my home. And we had been divorced for 6 months already, legally divorced, and I had purchased the home from him, so the home belonged to me, and I was just waiting for him to move out so I could begin to heal after nearly a 25-year relationship that ended very traumatically. I won't get into the story of the trauma. That's something, if you're interested in, you can go back to the episode called The Catalyst. You can read the article on my website called Love and the Emotional Vampire. And I'm writing a book that includes it as well. But when he finally left my home, it was only after an energetic breakdown. And you might call it an emotional breakdown. To me, I knew better. It was an energetic breakdown. It was my higher self pulling the plug on my energy because the time for this relationship had come to an end. And what that means is I did not have the energy or the strength because of what I went through to insist or force my ex-husband to leave my home. We had shared a business together that we built together over 12 years. So that was still a big part of our lives together. I wasn't in the heart space or didn't have the mindset to forcibly remove him from my house. So I suffered for a while, hoping that he would do what he said he was going to do and move out, which what I learned later, he was never planning to leave. And this is something that is a prominent part of a relationship between an empathic or a very empathetic person and a person who is emotionally vacant. The dynamic is very particular and specific, and it is particularly draining to the person who has a deep well of feeling. So I was not in a position to throw him out, and he kept telling me he was going to go, but he just would never leave. So what had happened is I was at work one day, which is I went to work at the same place every day. We had our own business together. And I was working at my desk, which I had done every day, and I just felt a drop in my energy. And I took notice. I sat back in my chair, and I just felt ill almost. It's so funny. As I'm speaking, the feeling is coming back into my body, almost as a reminder of the exhaustion that I started to feel. It was so deep, I had to sit. I had a recliner in my office that I used to take little cat naps when I was working. I laid back in my chair. I had to take off my shoes and my jacket. I could hardly breathe. And then this happened, and it lasted probably about 10, 15 minutes. But I went home because I was so exhausted, and I lay down the rest of the day. I didn't know what had happened. That happened 2 or 3 times, which was a prelude or a warning shot from my soul that you need to hurry this along, or I'm going to take matters in my own hands is what I see now as I look back. I went to work the next day, forgot about it. It ended up happening again. And what it prompted me to do was to talk to my ex-husband, which I had tried many, many times before, and say, could you please leave my home? And what he would say to me is basically, I don't have anywhere to go, which was not the truth. He had a best friend and his family. He could have gone to several different places. And he would just say no. And I'm not ready. So that evening, a couple of days later, I wrote him a letter and emailed it to him and just kind of tried to appeal to his sense of mercy and just tell him how I was feeling and how I needed to heal and how I couldn't do it while he was there. And could he please just move out? And that he could leave his stuff and we could work that all out, but could you please just go? And he just told me no. So I was beside myself. I was exhausted. I had this incredible energy event happening. I could not breathe. I was in distress. And I went to bed that night and I couldn't sleep. I woke up at like 5 o'clock in the morning and I got in my truck and just drove because I needed to get away. He was sleeping in the next room. I didn't know what to do. I called my daughter and she came to the parking lot at Panera at 6 a.m. to sit with me while I suffered. I couldn't breathe. She brought me water. She's like, Mom, what is going on? And that was the beginning of the end for me. I went home and I couldn't breathe. He was the only one home. I'm sorry, forgive me. That day, which was the day before, my daughter came home with me. My ex-husband had gone to work. My daughter came home with me and she stayed with me the day. She made sure I ate something. We talked about everything. I tried to explain to her what was happening and that I needed to be patient and wait for this to all work its way out and all these things I tried to do to remain positive. And she left me that day. I was fine. My energy had recovered. I was absolutely fine. She felt comfortable leaving me. And that evening, I went to bed and I did sleep a bit and I woke up early in this panic. I couldn't breathe again. And I was sure I was going to die. I mean, and the only other person in my home was my ex-husband. I knocked on his door in desperation and said, please take me to the hospital. And he got right up, which he always took care of my needs whenever I asked him, which was a very confusing dynamic during this time. But he rushed up, he took me to the hospital, he sat with me and checked me in. By the time I got into the room and I was telling the nurse what would happen, I knew what had happened. I knew what had happened. And I said in front of him, I said, I'm suffering an energetic breakdown because of my situation with my ex-husband. And he was right there and he didn't say a word. She left the room and I said, listen, look at me. You need to go. You need to get out of my home. I'm suffering. Could you please have some mercy on my body and please leave me? And he left without a word and I assumed he went home to get his things and get out of my house. But I left the hospital about 4 hours later. I called my sister to pick me up. And to my complete dismay, he texted me and said, when I texted him and said, hey, have you left? He texted me back and said, I haven't had time. So at this point, I lost my flippin' mind. And my sister called him from her vehicle when she saw the condition I was in when she picked me up and just said to him, what are you doing? Why are you still in her home? You don't belong there anymore. And he tried to deny and defend himself, but when he realized that he was on speaker and that I could hear him, he slammed down the phone and he went and picked up his things and he left. And I always look at that moment as kind of the darkness is once it gets illuminated, it disappears. And that's how I feel that went down. That once he realized that someone else knew what he was doing, he dissipated like smoke. He got his things and he left without a word. So that was the energetic breakdown I went through. That was 3 years ago at the end of June, 3 years ago, 2021. So that's a benchmark time for me. So as I enter this period of time after all of this, after all I went through in my awakening, which I also detailed in a lot of my podcasts and I'm working on in my book, I was basically my higher self. I described what happened as her slamming me in the head with a frying pan, shutting down my energy. So this separation could happen finally. After 25 years together, I was unable to throw him out. He would not leave. My higher self took matters in her own hands and shut me down, quite literally pulled the plug. And after that time, when he finally moved out of my home, is when I began to understand what I was doing here in this world and why I had gone through everything. I took about 7 months in what I call this is an express lane healing. And this was described to me in the tarot. And if you know anything about my history, after that dramatic end of that relationship, I was serendipitously introduced to my soul family who are not incarnated, who are in another realm, who are here to help me, to guide me towards my destiny. I have a destined future that contains particular events. And in order for me to be where I was supposed to be in the future, I had to be pulled out of that relationship, which was with a karmic soulmate, which was absolutely part of the design of this lifetime, as was everything I went through, in order to condition me for where I needed to go and what I was doing in this world. I was introduced to my soul team via the tarot, which was a serendipitous event. I didn't have any knowledge of the tarot before this. I was also introduced serendipitously to the material that I used as the roadmap to my healing, which I talk about often, which is the Gene Keys Golden Path. And I was also introduced to another tarot reader who was basically my resource for what I would do professionally in this world. All very serendipitously, all throughout my healing phase, which basically accelerated my healing. I remember hearing long ago that you need to heal for 1 month for every year you were with someone in a relationship. So if you take my relationship at 25 years, that's 25 months. That's more than 2 years for me to heal from the not even necessarily any trauma, which this relationship was foundationally traumatic, although I didn't realize it for many years. So let's say there's no trauma and you're just with someone for 25 years. It's supposed to take more than 2 years to recover emotionally or heal. Within 7 months, I was healed from this relationship, and I was also healed from the trauma of my karma, which is what I brought into this lifetime and had for many lifetimes, the trauma of my ancestral line, of all of my lifetimes. And this is what I worked on in this lifetime. In this lifetime, I was meant to overcome or heal, actually the right term is to integrate my trauma or my darkness, which is all the lower vibrational phase of my life, and integrate that into my body, into my energy. And then it becomes part of my superpower or my gift, which is to speak about it from a observational perspective. Meaning I'm not deep into the pain and I'm speaking about it with venom. I speak about it in reverence to all I've gone through and the purpose of everything that I went through, which included sexual and emotional abuse, not only from my husband, but from my parents and others. And this trauma was all important because it helped me play out my karma. And this is what we bring into the world. It gets mirrored back to us in our relationships, and we choose to either look in the mirror and deal with the karma or the trauma or the pain or the disillusionment or the confusion or the abandonment or the victimhood, whatever your toxic choice was that you brought into this world. And then you deal with those challenges. That's why we're here, to evolve our souls, ourselves, our soul selves. So I discovered all this during my healing and my awakening. And through all this, I discovered my purpose, which was to use my karmic lifetime and share what I've learned from a high perspective. And that is what I'm doing on this microphone and in everything that I write. So I described part of my journey or my work with my soul team, who told me unequivocally early on when they got my attention through the tarot that we are we are meant to come together at this time in your journey in this lifetime to guide you towards where you're meant to go. You have a destined future, which includes a twin flame soulmate and other things. So took me a long time to trust what I was hearing and what I was feeling, but basically ended up happening is my connection to my soul self, or my intuition, was reestablished because it had been lost. And I was now getting constant guidance and validation for what I was doing and feeling in this lifetime, in this body, by a team of souls who I regard as my family. And these are not just people who died and are now in their soul form. These are people or souls from all over the universe. These are extraterrestrials. They're star seeds or light workers. They are ancestors. They may be deities or gods or goddesses, angels or archangels. And I never had any understanding or knowledge of any of this before I was forced into this, forcibly pushed into this awakening. And that's the only way I can put it. If it were up to me, I would have withstood the trauma that I lived in with my ex-husband for the rest of my life, because he would have been happy to stay, and I would have not known that there was anything more for me out there. So I had to be forcibly removed from that relationship, and that was the pulling of my energetic plug, and then shown nearly immediately through absolute serendipity what I was meant to be doing here, and that I needed to get on it right now. We need to get this going. Let's go, 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 go. It is a fantastic story. It is one that fairy tales are made of, but it is my life. And I can be shy and coy about that, and I have been for a very, very long time. But it doesn't really serve me anymore. And if I lose listeners because I talk about my big ass soul self, then I guess that what needs to happen, and those who are meant to hear me will hear me. As I've always said, eat the chicken and leave the bones. If it resonates, take it home. If it doesn't, leave it where it sits. I'm not here to convince anyone of anything. I'm here to speak my truth and to do what my soul wants to do, which is to use this microphone as an instrument for healing and for hope and for the truth, which is honestly a big part of why I'm here today, is to tell the truth. Is I've learned so much about my soul origin and who I am in this lifetime and why I'm here. And a lot of it I've kept to myself because it's so out there. It's so incredibly outrageous. But it's just really gotten to the point now where these downloads, I've talked about downloads that I receive. And 2 years ago, December, I went through a heavy period of downloads, and I was told I was going to go through it. And what happens is, as I'm sleeping, I'm giving information as I sleep through the airwaves or the light waves or the photons and gamma rays. And they go into my body as I sleep, which is a dormant period of my mind, so my body can absorb this. And I was always told to lay in bed for up to a half hour or more awake, but kind of in a twilight phase, to allow whatever came into the night through this download to come into my awareness and my consciousness, so I can formulate thoughts and feelings about it, and then I can write or speak about it, which is what basically I've done the whole time throughout this podcast. Every subject matter is from a download. And you can call it wisdom, you can call it intelligence, you can call it whatever you want. But what this is a connection to the higher realms and the entities who are around me, who are feeding me this information because I'm meant to share it with the world. And there's so much more to that, but I won't go on and on. But the downloads are an important part of the story. So I often, when I'm not meant to be anywhere, and these days the only places I'm meant to be really are with my girls, which is part of the reason why I'm in this phase of dormancy, is to connect deeply with my daughter and her granddaughter, who are soulmate members of this family, who are incarnate right now as my family with their own business in this realm, their own missions. But we integrate each other, we help each other with our energy to ignite dormancies in our bodies and our energies to help each other along our own respective journeys. And my daughter has been a very big part of my journey. All the serendipity I talked about in the beginning about my awakening came from my daughter. She sent me the person, her girlfriend, to work for me, and she is the person who introduced me to the tarot and to the gene keys and to human design, which is another element of my understanding of my energetic body. And all of those things were the roadmap basically to my healing throughout my awakening, and then to find my purpose, which was disclosed to me quite literally when I was working through the gene keys. So all of this happened. This is not a fantasy. This connection with my soul team is so very powerful that after about a year and a half of watching the tarot, which I did online, I felt comfortable going on my own. And I basically said, you guys can take the training wheels off. You can stop the messages. I'm good. I hear you. I know you're there. I understand why I'm here. I don't need it anymore. And when I went to look at another reading, the message didn't resonate at all. And I knew that they had heard me and that it had stopped. And that was over a year ago now that I have not watched the tarot as a form of communication, but I still get lots of validating messages. And I talked in my last episode about many, many messages I'm receiving now from the higher self of my twin flame, who keeps me very well satiated with love letters and messages of our union. And I know that's meant to keep my body energized for that purpose. And all this will tie together, I promise. So the downloads are important to know, the messages, the validations, the soul team connection, the awakening, all of that has just such a huge purpose that I have, as I get these downloads and I gather this wisdom and I transduce it out to you or out into the world through my vibration, I am learning more and more about myself. And the truth is that I'm here in this incarnation, as many, 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 many others are, as what's referred to as a star seed. And a star seed is basically an entity from another star system who comes to Earth and incarnates in the human form to affect the humanity and the Earth. And there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions here right now, because this is a very important phase of evolution for the Earth. And the Earth is a being. The Earth is a consciousness, and it is a living being, as are galaxies and planets and stars. And this is something that is going to take way too long to describe, but I just will refer to you to the series Integration on Gaia TV, which is a source of my wisdom. And it is something I was serendipitously led to, as is everything else, so I can understand more from a scientific or a logical level what the origin of myself and this body of consciousness that of this earth, that where it all came from. This information is available to you too, and I share it every time I speak about it in a link to in my podcast notes. So this is all part of my study as an alien in a human form. And I feel like what I went through lately and what this last epiphany was, and it promoted, or it invoked me to write an article that I'm kind of referring to as my thesis to graduate the spiritual awakening that I experienced. Because it contains so many elements of what I've learned. And if you do read it, and this podcast is going to be rough, sparsely based on it, because there's too much to talk about verbally, I would keep you here literally all day, is to read the article. It's not quite finished, but it'll be a free download or a flip book. You can read it right on my website once it's done, and I'll post that on my social media. But these downloads and this wisdom that I receive is not just me. There are hundreds of thousands or millions of us here on Earth right now. We're referred to either as star seeds or light workers. We are here for an expressed purpose to go through the human experience, and in a very karmic experience in my case. But everyone that I have a relationship in this lifetime have had, do have, and will have, is part of the design of this lifetime that my soul put in place for me to experience, including my twin flame, who I happen to know his name, which is John, and I know his origin. He's from New Zealand, and he has a business in the same state that I reside in. They showed me who he is. I know who he is. And I've mentioned that before. I've never said his name. I won't say his last name. I won't say what his business is or where he is. But this is I've known about him for more than 2 years. And when I asked about him in the tarot, I said, "Are you sure this person is my soulmate?" The next morning when I would look at a reading, the very first message would be, "Yes, this is your soulmate." That is how clear the message is. It is not muddled symbols and signs. It is clear language that comes through the reader. And these two readers were chosen by my soul, my higher self, because of their ability, their clarity in reading and hearing and receiving messages, and then transducing that message to the listener through resonation, which I wrote about as well. This is all real. This is all my life. I mean, this is so amazing. I've had so many instances, and I'll talk about one of them. And I really haven't talked about this at all. I was saving it for my book, but I think it might be important to share. And I did share it in the article that I'm writing. Is the messages that I receive from from John, my twin flame, are not just social media messages. They are emotions that are invoked by his hand on my heart, his occupation, him occupying a space in my heart. And I don't know how to word this, but I feel he's an anchor in my heart. He is already in my body. This love affair has already started, even though we have not met in the 3D. And I know in the 3D we'll have a human relationship to navigate, but this is part of my destiny, is to come together with this soul who, him and I refer to him as him only in this lifetime. He could have been a female in the last lifetime. He could have been an animal in the one before that. The form doesn't matter. The gender doesn't matter. In this particular lifetime, he is a man, I am a woman, and we are coming together romantically. And we have a purpose together as well. And that I'll just talk about later. It's too in-depth to get into now. But the messages from him are not just, hey, have a nice day, I love you. It is so much more. And I'll describe one event so you have an understanding of the depth of this. I was told in one reading that to pay attention to my emotions when I see something on TV or I hear something, that if it strikes me powerfully and it causes me to have an emotional reaction, that is a message from John, my higher self, and to pay attention. It happened twice while I was listening to music. I don't want to talk about those. What I do want to talk about is I was drawn to watch a movie that I had avoided watching. And if you watch Netflix, and the recommended or suggested movies are always at the top, and I would see it. Actually, it was on Hulu TV at the time I had it. I would see this movie, and I saw the actor, and I loved the actor. I'm like, oh, I want to watch that movie. But I would end up passing it and watching something else, but it would always come up, and it was always there. And one day I finally said, I'm going to watch that movie. I turned on the movie. The actor was Brendan Fraser, who's one of my faves. I love him, especially George of the Jungle, which was one of mine and my daughter's favorite movies when she was young. And I started to watch this movie. And I started to realize what the premise of the movie was and how incredible it was that this movie was the one that I chose to watch. And I realized that this movie, and if you've seen this movie, it's called Still Breathing with Brendan Fraser. It's one of his, it's not one of his mainstream hits, but it is a really beautiful movie, and it got high acclaim. It's just really beautiful. I had never heard of it before. And as I was watching this movie, I realized what it was about. And it was about a man who was in a family of men, who the bloodline of the men in the family had visions of their soulmate. They had vivid visions of their soulmate, so much so that he had a vision board. And he was almost haunted by thoughts and visions of her, where he was always looking for her in the outer world. And his father had met his soulmate, which was his mother, because he had all these visions of her. And he walked onto a city bus one day, his father, and he saw the woman that he had been dreaming of, and she was with another man. And he went right up to her and told her, and they ended up together and having their son, who was the man, the lead actor in this movie, the Brendan Fraser character. So his bloodline, this is part of their heritage, and their what they do in the world is they look for their soulmate, who is vividly shown to them through visions that they have. So I'm of course thinking, oh my gosh, how amazing. I've had the same experience. I've known about my soulmate for more than a year at that time when I watched the movie. And I was so engaged now with this movie. I wasn't having any emotional reactions, but I realized how serendipitous it was that I was watching this. And I watched this movie, and it got to a point in the movie where he had found this woman who was his soulmate. She had no idea who he was. She was actually trying to take advantage of him in a scam. And he didn't know it. He just was already in love with her. He had already loved her. He ended up dating her, and she was disconnected emotionally. She was trying to take his money, and all of this stuff was going on. But he ended up bringing her back to his home, and she saw the vision board, and he explained to her what it was. And when she realized what was happening, and she had thought about in that moment all the visions that she had had of a boy when she was young, that she remembered, and that this love that was kind of unrealized, that she kind of was very confused that she was having these same kind of visions, but not the clarity of them like he was. She didn't see him. She remembered him as a boy, which I guess they had an interaction. And she lost her mind and ran out of the house. And he ran after her. And when he ran after her, he stopped her out in the yard, and he said to her, "You know I'm him." And when he spoke those words, I can still feel the emotion in my body. I felt my heart flutter, and I've never felt this before. And if you have, it is an amazing feeling. It felt like somebody took their fingers and just tickled my heart, like physically. It was such a powerful feeling. I paused the movie and I said, oh my God. And I burst into tears, and I knew what that was. I remembered immediately the message popped into my mind that pay attention to your emotions. I knew it was a message that had a physical element that literally tickled my heart. I felt it flutter in my chest from my twin flame, John, a message of love that, yes, I am him. And it was the most amazing and extraordinary thing I had ever experienced. And I have only told one person about that, and that was my daughter. But I was compelled to write about it, and I'm not sure why. I've never mentioned his name, but I have to do what I'm compelled to do, so there it is. That's one out of two events that happened during TV, and two during a song on the radio, and many, many others as I read messages. So just to kind of give you that insight as well to the power of this relationship, it is extraordinary. And to this day, I get messages up to yesterday morning, I had 4 in a row. One after another, messages of love and our sexuality, which is something that has to be rediscovered if you know anything about me, and about our relationship, our union, and what we'll do together. It's so incredibly powerful. I don't know when we're meant to come together. That has been always described to me as divine timing. But for some reason, I'm meant to talk about it, so that's what I'm doing. There are other events in my destiny that have been described to me in detail and over, and I'll highlight those as well. One of them is that I will be needed for a couple of years, and I'm in that period of time right now. I'm with my daughter and her granddaughter. I thought I was supposed to get a job. If you listen to the last few podcasts, you heard this whole story. But I was meant to be with my daughter and my granddaughter to integrate with them from as a soul to soul, and to spend this focused time with them for a couple of years, quote unquote, which could be a year, 3 years. The timeline in the linear doesn't really match, but it's a couple of years is what I was told. Another message which was completely disconnected to that was that I will move my money. And I have a retirement. It's not a very big one, not enough to last the rest of my life, not one I would have ever thought of going into before I was 70 years old because of the amount. But I knew that because I meant to spend a couple of years with my girls, and I've been retired from my business now for 2 years, and I was going to get a job because the money ran out, and that's what's next, right? Through a bunch of serendipitous events, which I did describe in the 2 podcasts, one called The Body and one The Process, I realized I was not meant to find a job, and I was meant to be with my girls. That's where the couple of years was supposed to be. And because of that, I remembered that I'm going to move my money, and without hesitation, I began to use my savings, which I would never touch. And now I have my retirement moved into an account that I can access the funds for the next couple of years. So I'm in that period, that predicted period right now. The next couple of things is I am meant to move across the world to a place my soul calls home. And I've come to know this place as New Zealand. And this place obviously is connected to my twin flame, who is from New Zealand. So there's no mistake there and the way this came up in the tarot, and I will write about this someday, or maybe I'll do an episode about how these messages came through. It's so fantastic. I was led to this understanding that my soulmate is from New Zealand and I'm to move across the world to New Zealand. I'm going to leave my family, and it's going to be the most difficult thing that I've ever done, but it will also end beautifully because my family will either be there with me eventually or I'll see them often. But I'm to live in New Zealand. And I've also been told that I'll be blessed with a lot of money. And this will segue me into the epiphany that I had. And the reason I'm going to be blessed with money, and I believe this is going to be ignited by my twin flame, who is considered the materialist in our relationship. I am the spiritualist. And the two of us are coming together to form this perfect union of someone who's had a spiritual life, which is me and all that I've discovered, and someone who has had a very successful material life, which is him and all he has achieved. And that when we come together, or sometime near that time, the ignition of material wealth will come into my life, which is something that has eluded me my whole life because it wasn't meant for me. There's a whole nother story there, but I want to keep moving. So he's the materialist, I'm the spiritualist. When we come together, or somewhere around then, I'm meant to have, or we are meant to have a lot of money. And the reason I was told that I would have a lot of money is because I would share it. And I'm going to now move into the whole purpose of this podcast episode, which is to talk about the epiphany that I had. And everything that I've learned about my imagination and daydreaming, and everything that I've learned about my third eye, and everything I've talked about throughout the history of my podcast episodes, which I think this is number 35. So if you want the whole story, start from the beginning, and you'll see how incredibly awkward I was because I had no idea why I was here. And I trusted the universe, who told me, you're going to be in your element. We need you to do this. Get on the microphone. It'll come to you. Trust it. And I did. And I was always told that I took a leap of faith, and that was such a brave thing to do. But that was what my soul is here to do, is to blaze new trails and to do things that I've never done, or maybe many people have never done, to show what can be done. So throughout my podcast episodes and everything that I've written, I have 12 articles on my website. Most of them are free downloads, or some of them are. I do ask a small fee for some of them. I don't know that I'll always ask that fee. I may take that off. But if you really want to know the history of everything I've learned, it's there too. Every epiphany, every download, every source of wisdom has come from outside of me. I am an intelligent being, don't get me wrong. But just like Nikola Tesla and Tchaikovsky and Walt Disney and many, many others, their wisdom, their craft, their alchemy came from their higher self, from the realms of the ethereal, through their body, into their awareness, and out through their hands. So just keep that in mind. But what had happened encompasses everything that I've gone through. That's why I kind of considered this podcast episode and the article that I'm writing, which poured out of me without me really thinking at all, as the thesis, my thesis for my graduation from my spiritual awakening and into the next chapter of my life, whenever that starts. I am in the void right now, where I'm still marinating, I'm still expanding, I'm still ascending. And all of that's in the article, which, if you care to read it, will be available soon. But anyway, this happened very serendipitously, as everything does in my life these days. And it's very difficult for me not to notice serendipity sewing together the tapestry of my destiny. It's in everything that I do, everything I see, every word I speak. So I invite you to listen to this incredible event that happened to me quite serendipitously a couple of weeks ago. I had just spent 3 weeks away from my daughter and granddaughter because I got sick from my granddaughter, who's a little germ pool, and I love her so much. I had spent 4 years pretty much germ-free after COVID, and all the time I spent alone. I did not have any illnesses at all. So when I started to spend a lot of time with my daughter and grandbaby, and she started to get inoculated and have these viruses active in her body, which unfortunately we have to go through in the American health industry, which is a whole nother thing. But anyway, she had reactions to these live viruses being injected into her. And I got sick, and I got something that lasted, actually my last episode, I was still coughing. I still have a little bit of a cough 5 weeks later. So I got sick. So I stayed away from my girls, even though I probably caught it from them, out of an abundance of caution. So I wouldn't communicate anything back to them and get the baby sick again or whatever. So I stayed away from them for 3 weeks. And during that time, I just stayed on my own, which I do in what I call my luxury of solitude. And I worked on my art, my craft, my soul work. I did a podcast. I worked on my website and, the stuff I do. I was outside just living my life. When that 3-week period ended and my daughter finally said, Mom, it's been 3 weeks, come on over. I went over on a Monday and I spent the day with them. And then I went over the next day on Tuesday and spent the day with them as well. Well, that Tuesday evening, after 3 weeks away and 2 days back, I got a call from my sister. And she was kind of stressed and I'm like, what's wrong? What happened? And she said, well, you're not going to believe this, but I was at a party last week on Thursday, which was the day her and I have dinner together on Thursday nights. That day at work, she was at a work party, and one of her workmates or her coworkers a week later found out that she had the measles. And during the time at the party, she was actively, what's the word? She could pass it to other people. I can't think of the word. So my sister was in close contact with her. So she, even though we were both inoculated, just felt compelled to tell me, hey, I was exposed to this measles virus. I don't know if I'm a carrier and if I gave it to you, or if you're a carrier. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I could give it to the baby. And I'm like, you know how that goes. So I told her, thank you for letting me know. I was laughing because it was so crazy that 3 weeks alone, I spent literally 1 hour with one person, and this was the result. I had a measles scare. So I called my daughter and I said, listen, honey, I'm so sorry, but my sister just told me this incredible thing. I now feel like I need to stay away from you guys. The incubation period is another 7 days exactly. I can't see you for another week. And she was laughing and said, Mom, oh my gosh. And I told her on that call, I said, I know this is not the measles. I cannot help but know that this is a serendipitous event to get me to stay home away from you for some reason for the next 7 days. And I even told her that, and we were laughing together. So I hung up the phone, and the next morning I got up and I walked over to my kitchen counter, and there was some cash laying there. And there was a little bit of cash. I don't really have any cash anymore. I use my debit card, as most of us do. But my daughter and I, a few weeks before, we were out shopping together, and we went to lunch and we ate in the car because the baby was sleeping. And then we ordered from this restaurant. We both put in $20 bills, and I went in and paid the bill, put the change in my pocket, and went in the car. We ate our meal and went on with our day. Well, that change was sitting on the counter. And when I walked over to this change that I tried to give back to my daughter, and she said, Mom, just keep it. It's no big deal. It was half hers, half mine. It was $9.80. I took a picture of it after this, and I'll explain why. I walked over to the money to pick it up and put it in my little phone wallet, and I noticed a series of numbers on the $5 bill. And immediately I thought, oh my gosh, I should play the lottery. It was almost like I was compelled to think that this was a lottery number. And of course, I know from the messages that I'm meant to have money, and who am I to judge how the money comes? So I thought, okay, well, I don't even know if this fits as a lottery number. And the Mega Millions had just been won. We had just been speaking about it the day before, my daughter and I and her husband, about how cool it would be to win the money and how she wants generational wealth for her family. It sparked this whole conversation. And when I was talking about the change from the restaurant that we ate at during that time, her husband, and she said to me, Mom, keep the money. Her husband said, why don't you buy a lottery ticket? And I totally forgot about it. So next morning, I walk into my kitchen and there's this cash with this number on it. And I took a picture of it because I was so amazed. And I said, oh, maybe this is a lottery number. And so I was doing the dishes and I said, you know what, just calm down, finish what you're doing and see if the numbers even match the format of a Mega Millions Megaplier ticket. And so I finished what I was doing. I went to the number. I wrote it down on a piece of paper. I had no idea. I've only played the lottery once before. I'll explain that. I went to my phone and I Googled what's the lottery the number format. And I pulled up a ticket and I realized that the number was exactly the amount of numbers that you would need for a ticket. And I was just like, what the heck? So I'm not excited. I have this peace in my body. I'm like, if this is the way I'm going to get money, then I'm going to win the lottery. And this is going to be the way I get my fortune that I'm going to share with everybody. And I realized in just delight that half this money was my daughter's, half the change. And if I use this $9 to go buy the tickets, I can give her half the money, and it's not a gift to her. It is me delivering a gift from the universe to her because it was her cash. So this is how much detail I was thinking of this. So the same day, that Wednesday, I went to buy a ticket. And I couldn't remember how to do it because I'd only done it once before. It was a little bit awkward. But when I looked at the number and I had the ticket, I realized, oh, it doesn't fit. There's a repeating number and you can only use one number once. And for a moment, I'm like, oh, it doesn't fit. And then I realized, oh, duh, the Megaplier number is the duplicate number. So I used the duplicate number, which happened to be a number 7, which has a whole nother thing, which I won't get into, as the multiplier. So if I won the pot, it would be multiplied by a certain amount because I paid the extra dollar to multiply the jackpot. So in order to use the whole $9, I also bought 2 other numbers, which I just used the auto pick function. But the first number was this number that I found on this $5 bill. So that was a Wednesday. By Wednesday evening, I was already daydreaming. I didn't tell anybody about this because I figured I'd keep it to myself because this had happened several months before, where I had an inclination or an intuitive nudge to buy a lottery ticket. And I had never bought one before, but I said to myself, I feel like doing it. I need to do it. Go do it. So I pulled my daughter in. I said, listen, I had this intuitive nudge. I'm going to go buy a lottery ticket. This was last summer. It was almost a year ago, I think. I'd never bought one before. I had no idea how to play. I had to figure out where to buy one. I had to figure out how to fill out the ticket. It was a vending machine, which was so confusing. I had to get the lady there to help me buy the ticket. It was just this big cluster for me to buy the ticket. But I got the ticket and I went to my daughter's after the drawing and I said, listen, we're going to do this together. Here's what I'm going to do with all the money. I'm going to give everybody a little bit and I'm going to use it for this. And I'm going to keep this amount for myself. I had all this idea about what I was going to do with it. And I brought her into it, and we looked at the ticket the next morning together, and it was not even close. Did not win the lottery. And I was laughing, and I said, oh, I'm so sorry to her for dragging her into this fantasy. I said, I apologize. And she was laughing. She said, Mom, it's okay. That happened several months ago. I'm not sure how long ago at this point, that I went through that exercise of following my intuition. So I said to myself, as I was waiting after I bought the ticket, I said, keep in mind, Gina, this could be another exercise for you to really tune in and to follow your intuitive nudges and to make sure that when and if that time comes, if it's not now, that you're ready to take the action in the world to facilitate whatever's meant to come to me, whether it's money or an opportunity or a relationship, it doesn't matter. But it was maybe a practice run again. And this time I just took it and ran with it. I had no doubt, no pause at all. And so that was Wednesday evening. I started to think about what would I do with the money. And of course, right off the top, I used 60 million as the amount that I would have after taxes. That was just the number that came into my mind. I said $60 million, half of it goes to my daughter. It's hers. It was half her change, half of it's hers. So 30 million goes to her. And I'm now giving her, through the universe, I'm handing her generational wealth, which she was just talking about. So that felt so perfect to me. And then I'm daydreaming about what I'd do with the rest of the money. And Wednesday night through all day Thursday, which was the next day, and all day Friday, which was the night of the drawing, I sat in quarantine, mind you, couldn't go anywhere, in my chair that I've talked about often, and my back window, looking out at my backyard and the tops of the trees in the sky. And I fell into these daydreams. And these daydreams were so vivid about what I would do with this money. And I could tell you all the detail, would take too long, but basically what I said to myself when I was done with these 2+ days of daydreaming, and not the entire days, I would spend a couple of hours the first day and an hour the second day in that chair, and that would go about the rest of my day. It wasn't the whole time. But I would think about, and what I ended up kind of surmising that I would do with all this, with this 30 million, which was my half, is I would keep probably about 5 million for myself. So I'd have enough for the rest of my life and to travel the world, which is part of my soul's purpose as well, is to visit ancient locations across the globe, Mesopotamia, the pyramids of Giza, the Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, Stonehenge in the UK, Easter Island in Peru, all of these incredible places that are megalithic spots that are energy portals all over the earth, which are attached to the crystalline grid, which is a whole nother story. But part of my purpose in this world is to go to these places as an activator or a light being to activate the light and to be activated. And again, this is a whole nother story. So I wanted to have the money to travel to these places and to live on the ocean in New Zealand under a blanket of stars, which I want to live under the Milky Way. I want to be able to look up every night and see that incredible galaxy over my head, our galaxy, the Milky Way. And of course, the visible planets and the zillion stars. That's where I want to be. That's where my soul has guided me back to. It's what she considers our homeland. And you see the connection. And I also have a niece who lives in New Zealand, and I don't know how she got there. But I have a niece in New Zealand as well, who I don't know very well. I've only had very minor contact with. And she very well may be part of the story. I don't know yet. So I would have enough money to be able to travel at will and to have the freedom that I wish for or I imagine in my life every day. And I don't think any more than 5 million is needed. Now, keep in mind, I don't need generational wealth anymore. My daughter is taken care of and her family. So I don't need to have wealth for her when I pass away. I can spend it. So 5 million I thought was a reasonable amount for a long lifetime to travel and to live the rest of my life. And I'm not a materialistic person. I don't need things. I don't imagine buying cars and clothes and jewelry and I don't care about any of that. And of course, that's part of the design of my soul is to live very, very minimally, which is how I live. I don't have many things at all. I don't care about them. I don't wear jewelry. I don't have any habits that cost money. I don't care about any of that. Good food is really where I spend most of my money. Good, healthy food. So I want enough money for that. And that leaves me $25 million. And I said I would take half of that $25 million and I would give it to my friends and family. And I imagine giving $1 million each to my daughter's father, my first husband, and to my sister, and then maybe 500,000 each to all my family members. And I just such detail about what I would do with all this money and to the people who affected my journey and just everybody I can think of that I would want to give money to, friends and family. And then the other half of it, which would be about 12.5 million, I would keep in an account to give away to people in my community, which would be New Zealand, or across the world who had ideas that were gifts from the universe to help heal and cultivate the earth in a thoughtful way. So this is the water and food source, is what I want to have money to invest in. And this is how I imagine using this money. And I'm not going to lend the money and have accountants and lawyers and sue people if they don't pay me back and get percentages of money. No, I want to be able to give it to them and say, listen, I believe in you. I believe in what you're doing. I was energetically or intuitively led to you, or you led to me, because energy is so prevalent. And I'm giving you this gift because I want to see what you're doing birthed into the world. And to be this benevolent giver would be the most extraordinary thing that I could think of to do with this money. So that is kind of what I daydreamed about for 2 days about this money. So Friday night comes, the drawing's at 11 p.m. and I'm sitting and I'm working on something, or I'm looking at my phone or whatever I was doing. And I'm thinking it was about 11:15. I'm thinking I had this incredible stillness in my body. And I just said to myself, if this is meant to be, it will. If not, what an amazing practice run this was, is what I said out loud. And 11 o'clock came and went. I waited till about 11:30, and then I Googled the winning number on my phone. And I looked at the number, and it was not even close. It was not even close. Not even one number that I had was in the winning lottery number. And when I realized the amount of the jackpot was only 9.4 million cash option, I'm like, that's not enough money to do what I want. So I was actually laughing about it. I said, this is hilarious. And I knew in my body that I was meant to go through this process, this practice run of following my intuition without doubt, without hesitation. And it felt so good. I was so proud of myself. But I said to myself, I'm so glad I didn't pull my daughter in this time. I'm not going to tell her about this. This is kind of embarrassing. And I went to bed that night, which was a Friday night. And all day Saturday, I really didn't think about it much. I was going to go take the ticket to get it checked, do the scan. And I'm like, nah, I'm not going to do that. I know it's not a winner. I checked it. And I left the ticket on the counter and I just went about my day and just really forgot about it, to be quite honest. And when I sat in my chair that day with my tea, which I do most mornings if I don't have to go to my daughter's, I fell into another daydream. And this time it wasn't about the money. It was about my twin flame and what life would be like. And this is something I often do. And I don't think about him, the man, and I know what he looks like. I think about the feeling of being with a person who has the capacity to stand next to me, to be in my energy, which I am a huge soul. And I'm not saying that to be anything other than truthful. You can't see my soul from my exterior, but if you're in my presence and you are sensitive to energy, you feel it. And this is not, again, it's not a conceited statement. It just is. I have the effect on people who are, and I'm going to say this once and I'm going to let it go because I don't want anybody to be insulted by this, but this is something that's been told to me over and over and has happened to me throughout my lifetime, not just in this awareness, is if I meet someone who doesn't want to be seen. Remember, I'm an empathetic person. I guess I'm an empath. I have deep empathy and I have the ability to see people at a soul level. If you realize that in my energy, you leave me, you do not come back. This has happened to me over and over where I meet someone who I think we're striking up a friendship and we might even talk once in a while, but I never see you again. And this happened with somebody who I thought was near and dear to me, who once all the other elements of our relationship disappeared. We had a business together. We had other mutual friends. When all that disappeared and it was just me and this person, they left and never came back. That was the end of it. And I never understood why. And now of course I know. And I've been told over and over, when people don't want to be seen, they don't want to be around me. And I understand that. I get it. So I am this kind of force of nature, and many of us are, especially the deeply empathetic who are aware of their gifts. So I'm daydreaming about my twin flame and about what our life would be together, how I would feel in his energy, how I would ignite and expand in the healing and loving energy of the man who is half of my soul, is how he's described. He's described as my soul splitting in two at the beginning of this life, being born in two different people and having opposite experiences in this lifetime, literally opposing experiences. Him, the materialist, me, the forlorn victim who became the spiritualist. Those are our life stories. And when we come back together, it is the soul, one soul reconnecting into one. That's how powerful and magnetic this union is meant to be. So I'm having this daydream about this. I won't even say him, about this relationship. And I went on with the rest of my day and I went to bed that evening, which was a Saturday night, the night before Easter. I went to bed that evening and I wasn't thinking about much of anything. I went to sleep and I woke up the next morning and I did what I always do. I lay in bed for while I'm awake, but kind of in twilight. And I just allow whatever might have come through the evening to permeate into my awareness. And as I'm laying there, I started to think about the lottery again. And I thought, it was such a cool exercise that I went through. And I think I will tell my daughter because I think it's important for her to hear this. Because if we're meant to expand and help each other with our gifts, she needs to hear this. This was an incredible exercise of me following my intuition. And I thought, oh, cool, I'm going to tell her. She'll think it's fun, the whole story. And as soon as I had this realization, I had this incredible epiphany. And I feel, oh my God, I can feel it in my body right now. It is this incredible energy that is just, it's like a bubble around my body. It came through like a burst into my awareness. And I realized that something I had been learning about very, very casually was co-creation. And I've mentioned it a couple of times, but in passing, I've not really spoken about it. I'm watching a series on Gaia called Initiation, which talks about this gentleman who is the host of this, mentioned this before, has lived many, many lifetimes, and he remembers them. And I'm talking back millions of years. And this is another anointed soul or another avatar in our lifetime, in our world, like Jesus Christ was. to bring awareness to us as humanity, to help us evolve out of our lower shadow selves. That's what all the star seeds and light workers are doing. So I'm, oh my gosh, what was I saying? I do this often. I just have so much energy in my body. So I have this epiphany about co-creation. Here we go. And I'm learning a little bit about co-creation and how it is really something that humans are not capable of, because our DNA has been limited. And there's a whole nother story behind this that I won't go into. But the beginning of humanity, we were created by gods who are creation of the source energy, which I refer to as Sophia, is a feminine source of consciousness who wanted to understand herself and who recreated herself in a material way, and therefore gave birth to or created the gods. And I've always had a weird connection to Greek mythology. As a child in school, I didn't pay attention. I was not engaged at all. We moved around so much. I never felt like I belonged in school. I quit school at 16. But the only subject matter I paid attention to and excelled in was Greek mythology in my English class. So much so, and I think I mentioned this before, I got the highest score on a final exam when I was barely in school, because the subject matter was so interesting to me. And of course it is, because I have a soul connection to it. And of course, the movies I watch about Greek mythology and even the Spartans and medieval times is another whole thing. And my connection to Scotland, and there's a whole nother story there. But I'm having I'm thinking about all these things, and they're all coming together. This co-creation is a term that's popping up a lot. And I'm like, what is this about? I woke up that morning and realized what co-creation is and why we as humans, I was told and have learned, cannot co-create, because those gods that created us, they're good and bad entities, just like there's good and bad people, and we were tinkered with, and our DNA was supposed to be expansive and allow us to carry information. We were meant to be, Earth was a hub for information for all the species in the universe, to put their information for safekeeping. It was a central location. It was meant for humans. Humanities were meant for that. Information is being held in the trees, in the grass, in the ice, in our bodies. All this whole region of this earth, this planet, this living being was meant to hold information from all of the galaxies, all of the species of life. That was, from what I understand, that was tinkered with early on by species who wanted to use humanity in a different way. And I won't go into that as well. But our DNA was mostly rendered dormant, and it was limited. So when you look at our DNA, and most scientists will tell you most of it is dormant. It's considered junk DNA. And I've mentioned this before without knowing why, that's the ethereal connection we have to source, is through that dormant DNA. And we are unable to co-create as humanity in our lower vibrational lives of our experimentation, our experience, our experiential part of our lives, which I've discussed before, as we come into the world as an expression of consciousness. And then we have what's called our experiential phase, or our experimentation phase, is when we go through our darkness, when we experience adversity and pain and disappointment and all the things, our karma. And then we go to the next phase, which is integration, which is where we look at our lives from an eagle's eye and see everything as its purpose. And then we're able to integrate all of that experience into our energy, thereby transmuting that pain into a source of power and a connection to source consciousness. That is the integration phase of the soul's life in this incarnation. And after the integration, we graduate and transcend, and we leave this body and this life, and we go off to another one. And this is all the purpose of all of it, is for the soul to keep evolving. And this, again, is from the same series, Integration, which of course is no mistake that I was watching at the time of all this came in. So I have language around it. I have a context to put it in. And that is what I'm meant to do, is to as an empathetic person, I'm meant to feel life at a depth that most people can't. And then with a powerful third eye, I can see it from a third person perspective and then discuss it with you. This is my purpose, part of it anyway. So I discovered that, and I refer to myself as an experiential physicist. And I did this very playfully in the beginning, but honestly, I've gotten to the point now where this is really the only way to describe what I'm doing. Physics is the study of matter and wave or energy. Experiential physics is the study or the experience of wave energy in the physical body. It is the same thing from a different perspective. So maybe I've created a new vocation here, and maybe it can be adopted by other light workers and star seeds. But I am an experiential physicist and a transducer. A transducer takes one form of energy and transduces it into another. The gamma and photon rays that come from the cosmos into my body as wisdom, I transduce out into the world as in language and through the vibration of my body, which has a whole nother effect. As the body ascends, the vibrational frequency rises, and that creates a whole nother game, which I won't talk about now. So this epiphany about co-creation was how humans are unable to co-create. And this was talked about in the series because you have to be in the eighth or ninth dimension. I don't remember exactly. I'm not meant to be a technical specialist. I am just transducing. And please go look for this information yourself if you're more interested in the detail. In the eighth and ninth dimensions is when we've gone through enough iterations of lifetimes and we've experienced life from enough perspectives to be able to say, I've done all that. I'm graduated from this phase of my evolution. And now I can go into this whole other dimension where dormancies, and I refer to these dormancies as in our DNA, are reignited or awakened, and we're able to co-create with the universe. Now, manifestation is something I don't speak about much, and I write about this in the article. I don't really understand it. I've never experienced it, but I've come to a conclusion that will get me through it anyway. In the lower realms or the lower vibrational vibrancy of our lower selves, and I'm referring to our lower selves as the version of us, the iteration of us as a being in our lower energy cycles, which is when we come into the world with our karma and we have to fight through our karma by having relationships that mirror it back to us, by having situationships, opportunities, experiences. All of these are meant, as I said before, to push and pull at our karma, at our demons, our dragons, and either cause us to rise above and slay our dragons and exercise our demons, however you want to put it, and then rise above, ascending above our lower selves into the higher frequencies where a whole nother world is available to us, where our energy expands, our perspective expands exponentially, our heart opens and expands into unconditional love. And there's a whole nother set of podcasts here, and I could spend all day, but I have to stay on track. But once we reach these higher frequencies, this is our evolution of the soul. We could very well leave the body and not be incarnated for a very long time and still enjoy this evolution. The body is only a vehicle to get us to that point. In this vehicle, we can have these close encounters with other beings, with other people, these relationships that require our emotions and our senses, which are all part of the sensory experience of this virtual reality life that we're living in order to evolve. That's the purpose of it. That's what I've been shown over and over and over again. And that's why being told that I have a powerful third eye, which I, again, had no understanding until very recently what that was, is our ability to see above all of it and the purpose of it and not be emotionally affected anymore. The emotions serve such a critical role in our evolution in this incarnation because it takes us, it's the energy that purges the pain and disillusionment out of our body. It is the energy that pushes our karma out into the world. It is the energy, our emotions, that co-creates. But it cannot do it in the lower vibrations because the frequency has to be much higher. The frequency has to be of love. And I've talked about this briefly and sporadically, but I want to focus a little bit more on this. Love is the frequency that heals all. Love is the frequency that unifies and unites all. Love is the frequency that awakens all. Love is the frequency that co-creates. If you are not in a state of unconditional love, and you only get there through your lower iterational versions of yourself, your lower shadow self, which I refer to as the young woman who went through all the trauma and pain and abuse, and who ended up in a relationship with an emotionally vacant person who was there under contract as a karmic soulmate to catalyze or cause my awakening, which is exactly what he did. He did a beautiful job. I love him deeply. When you have that perspective, when you can love the person, the soul who literally tore you apart, then you have the capacity to love unconditionally. So when you go through these iterations of yourself, and then you first start to experience self-love, that's the first step. And then when you love yourself, you start to see that everyone is going through the same thing that you went through, that our darkness is a rite of passage to our awareness, to our etherealness, to our awakening. We don't get there until we go through that. You have to go through the dark in order to experience the light. That's what this whole thing's about. Now, there are some of us who come into this world completely illuminated. Those are the avatars. That's not meant for most of us, and for certainly not me. I went through a very, very, very long 58-year dark period. And that version of myself then ascended to the version of myself who realized what was happening to her, who ascended to the version of herself who realized the purpose of all that was happening to her, and then who could see others as a soul and that they're going through the same things that I went through. And it caused you to be a jerk in this world. It causes you to behave badly as you project out onto everyone else your pain because you don't know how to look inward to heal it. And then you graduate into the higher frequencies. And I don't know the dimensions. I'm not going to pretend to. But from what I understand, there are 9. And I don't know which one I'm in. I have no idea. But I'm wholly and completely aware through this epiphany that I had, that co-creation is only possible when unconditional love is the default energetic signature in your body. When you have the ability to look out into this world, even completely alone, and this is my story as much as it is ours. I called the article that I'm writing Resurrection of the Goddess. Co-creation is the awakening of the dormant DNA in our body. It is our ability to co-create our reality, not to manifest. And let me go back to that really quickly. Manifestation, as far as I can tell, in the lower realms is only our ability to manifest what is best for us. And when we don't know what's best for us, we are pretty pissed off when we get it. And what I mean is, when we're in our lower vibrational shadow selves, having this experiential experiences, this phase, we are calling to us through manifestation or through frequency or the resonation of our frequency, what is meant to help us heal our karma. So if you are looking for true love and you're meeting these people who are only causing you to feel worse about yourself, they are your resonant, the answer from the universe. They're coming into your world saying, hey, I'm here. Let me help you heal. But what we see them as, because we don't have the perspective, we see them as more pain piling on top of the pain that's already in our bodies. We don't realize they're holding up a mirror to us. And I have an episode called The Relationship Mirror where I talk about this. They are holding a mirror up for us to see ourselves. They are mirroring us so we can look at our own karma and begin to heal it. If we look away from the mirror, we are just destined to experience that same thing over and over and over again. That is manifestation in the lower realms. You may very well manifest money, but you will not have the open heart and the clarity of mind to actually enjoy it. You will either spend it all fervently because you're afraid that you don't deserve it, or you will hoard it and hide it in a vault and never move because you're so afraid someone's going to steal it. You know what I'm saying? Or you'll destroy yourself with it. You don't have the capacity to enjoy it, which I define as an evolved soul, is having the capacity to enjoy blessings. I mean, I can go on and on with examples, but you know what I'm saying? If you're not clear in your body and your heart isn't open, these blessings are going to be more thorns in your body. They're going to end up causing more heartache. If you get the business of your dreams and your default energetic signature is the fear of failure, or the fear of that you're not enough, or your deepest insecurities, that business will only serve to mirror all that back at you. And you may have success that might be construed as success from the outer world, but you will suffer with it. You will not enjoy it. This is my point. It is not that you get things in your life, and it's not about materialism anyway, which is a whole nother podcast. But if you get material blessings or wealth in your life and you're not healed, you don't have the capacity to truly enjoy it. You can argue with me all you want, but if you really think about it, you'll understand what I'm saying. True love, if you're in a long-term relationship and everyone looks at your relationship and says, oh my God, they've been together 40 years, I want that. But when you look deep into their bodies, they coexist. And they've just gotten so used to the miserable coexistence that they don't do anything about it. I'm not saying everyone is that way. I'm not making any sweeping exclamations. I will never do that in my life. There are always exceptions. But I just want you to think of the overarching context of what I'm saying. In the lower vibrationals, all we can manifest are the lessons and the opportunities for these lessons for us to heal ourselves. And when we do that, and this is exactly what my ex-husband was for me. He was emotionally vacant. How could I, this deeply empathetic and loving person, have mirrored that? Well, I was empty too. Whole nother story. So please just hear me when I say, and you don't have to agree with everything. I don't care. It's not my purpose. It's for you to agree. It's just for me to make these statements so I can follow through on what my body is telling me to do. So lower vibrational manifestation, from what I've experienced, is just manifesting the opportunities to heal. If there is not love, there is only the effort to find love. There's nothing else. And when you reach the frequency of love, the love frequency is when you heal, your body is healed, your energy is clear, your heart is open, even if you're all by yourself, which is what I've experienced for the last couple of years. This earth is my family. This earth is my mother. I revere her as my mother. I've gotten so incredibly close to her. I got a message the other day from the higher self of my twin flame, and I believe from my higher self, that basically said, when I meet you, I'm taking you outside into nature. And if you hug the trees and whisper secrets to them and you revere the flowers, then I know that you're made for me. If you trample on her and ignore her beauty, I know that you won't care for me because I am her. And that was such a poignant message for me. It's not exactly what it said, but something like that. And it's just really helping me become conditioned for this love and how it's going to be expressed in this world and how connected this man's soul is to mine. And I don't know if this means we're going to meet soon or not, but this is certainly ramped up. I mean, over the last 4 months, I've been getting these messages every single day. And I've learned not to look too deeply into anything and to let divine timing be what it is. So back to co-creation. Co-creation is a godlike ability or goddess-like ability to create your reality, not to bring elements into your life, things and people, but to recreate or rebuild or manifest your reality. And when I think about that, I think about not my life, not even my environment, but I think about the world. And if many of us, and I believe this is the purpose of many of us now, we're in this frequency of love. And if we could all co-create, we could bring about a new reality where fear is not the default mechanism in the body, because fear cannot be held in the higher frequencies. It drops away like armor. We don't need it anymore. It's no longer a functioning part of our psyche. And in these higher frequencies, we are able to manifest at will. And I was exposed to this, again, I don't even really remember when or where, somewhere recently. I think it was a YouTube video that talked about the new human, which I will briefly mention also. The new humans are not light workers and starseeds who were born between the 1940s and the 1990s, which I'm one of them. But they're referred to as the indigo children, which my daughter is, I've been told, is an indigo child. And they're also coming in now as the golden children, the platinum children, and the diamond children. And from what I've been told, these are children who are born with the expanded DNA. They don't have the dormancies that we suffer with. They have this ethereal connection to source that we do not have because that dormancy in our DNA. They don't have to suffer the vagaries of life that we had to, most of us, in order to awaken from it and to have these realizations and to go forward and learn love, self-love, love of others, unconditional love, and now I can co-create. It takes a clear, open channel. It takes the humming in synchronicity of all of the chakras with the earth and the cosmos in order for this channel to be wide open to receive this light, which is the source of this gift. This ethereal connection to source is only possible through this love frequency, is my point. So when I think of co-creation, and the epiphany was that this is how we co-create. That I'm not saying that I'm able to do that at this point. I'm just saying I was told and I'm meant to know how to do that. That by sitting and daydreaming, I'm not just thinking about what I want, like the result of it. And this is very important. The soul wants the feeling of the experience. That soul doesn't care about the trophy of the guy or the girl or the money or the car. Or they don't care about that. That's the human reward, I guess. What the soul wants is the feeling, the emotional feeling of being in love, of success, of being benevolent and having money to give. And so the daydreaming that I do, and I only touched on this briefly when I did the podcast called The Imagination Factor. And then I did another one called What God's Dream. I was just scratching the surface of this, knowing in my body that this clear and open channel that is fueled by the emotion of love acts like a rocket through the veil of all dimensions into the source consciousness is the best way I could put it. And when that rocket reaches source consciousness, it gathers all of the resonating energy. Everything that resonates with the love frequency gathers it up as energy molecules, and it brings it back through this channel and manifests it as a physical reality. And it comes in the form of chance encounters, opportunities out of nowhere, and good fortune. And that is not manifestation to me. Manifestation in the higher realms is the ability to change your reality. It is not just things to improve my life or my mood. It is the changing of my whole world. And I imagine my heart goes out to the cosmos. I imagine a world, and I was shown this in a video, that these children are coming in born with this gift of co-creation. And they are knocking down all the constructs because they don't serve an awakened community. They are recreating the unity in the world through love, through compassion, through vulnerability, through empathy. These deeply empathetic people. And it makes me think of the word, and my very few phrases come to mind from the Bible, which I have not ever read. And the one phrase that comes to mind is the meek shall inherit the earth. And I included this in my article because it was such a prominent thought. The meek are the vulnerable, the thoughtful, the feelers, the empaths. These are the souls who will heal and ascend this earth. That is the truth. And they are also ascending us as humanity. They're coming in, and the world is described as being able to manifest at will, so money will not be needed. You won't need currency. You can manifest your food. You can manifest your home, your vehicle, everything that you need. But the whole point is that because currency isn't needed and there's no borders on the ground to prevent us from walking into each other's territory, the world becomes one again, a unified community of people. Not black, white, yellow, or brown. We are here as a unity of people. And we are a community again. And we teach and we learn from each other's diversity. And we are not only a community of people, of diverse people on this planet, but there's a whole cosmos out there, which is where my heart goes. All the star systems, I'm from a specific star system. I have a family and community there that I left to come here to do this. Many of us have. There are, from what I understand, more than 200 species of alien, quote unquote, extraterrestrial life out there. And there is a confederation of of leaders who come together, similar to our NATO, who protect the cosmos. And I've learned so much more. Oh my gosh, I could tell you a zillion things right now. But what about a community where we are neighbors with the cosmos and we share technology or recipes or I don't know, where we welcome other life forms here just because they don't look like us, which is the whole point, doesn't mean they're not a valued life. I mean, this is the whole point of evolution, is to see ourselves as a mechanism of all life. We are all connected. We are here in a sentient form to have a sentient experience, to evolve our souls. But our soul is not sentient. It is connected to all consciousness, to source. We are never alone. We are never lonely or left or abandoned. That is only a human construct caused by an egoic mind who doesn't know any better. We are source energy. We are the stars. We are the planets, and we're living on a living being. And when you come to that realization, you have no choice but to be in absolute and constant reverence of this life, of this body that I was blessed with, birthed into this world by this Mother Earth, blessed with all of this abundance of food and water and air and all of the elements of fire and this incredible cosmic eye that I can see it all with. We are meant to evolve to the point where we can be a community again, and we revere life, not just the earth, our own lives, each other's lives. And I'm going to say one more thing and I'm going to let you go because I know this is running long. I learned this recently and it came up more than a couple of times, so I feel I want to end with this. The origin of humanity, which was hundreds of thousands of years earlier than we know, and I believe we were created by gods. And these gods were created by source consciousness. This Mother Sophia is who I regard her as. And these gods populated this earth as a means to hold this information. And there's so much to learn here, and I don't know much at all. I only know what expands in my body and comes out of my mouth. But they created the races as a way to hold all of the wisdom of the universe into people. And they put their blood, all of the gods, into each genome for each of these races. And the 4 races are, and what they're meant to do are, the African race were given the gift of water. They were given the secret of water. The Asian race was given the secret of wind and the wisdom of the wind. The white race was given the gift of fire and the wisdom of fire. And the tribal people, the indigenous people, were the ones that were given the secrets of the earth, the wisdom of the universe. And that's why I regard indigenous people as the wisest on earth, because they have the integration of all this knowledge. They were trusted as people of the earth who revere and live on the earth without the expansion of colonization, that they are entrusted with this wisdom. So if you look at this construct or this population of the earth in these 4 races, given each this one elemental gift, and look at the way we treat each other. This is the first lesson for our souls in this realm when we start to realize what we're doing here, is that diversity is the point. That each of us hold an elemental wisdom that we're meant to share in a community, in a world where all of us thrive. So I will leave you with that, and I thank you so much for staying with me if you stayed through the whole thing. This feels like my thesis to graduate from my spiritual awareness training. And I thank you so much for listening. And I hope that you that you look at the article, which is going to be much expanded, which will be published soon. And I'll put it on my social media. But thank you again for listening. I appreciate you all very much. Thank you.